Let's start the show. You already know who it is. My name is Mike Kyle, aka the Fantasy Vulture. I have over a decade worth of fantasy football experience and have continuously competed for fantasy championships over the course of the past 6 seasons. Let's make it 7 in 2020. But enough of me. I'm here for you. On today's episode of the FV Show, we're going to continue our All-32 NFL team preview series, breaking down each and every NFL team all through the lens of fantasy football. Today we're continuing the AFC East with the Miami Dolphins. But before we get started with this video, a few quick things from you. First off, smash that subscribe button, power running back style like Derrick Henry up the middle so that you never miss a video from me. And also hit that like button down below like an open receiver, downfield Patrick Mahomes style. And a few more things if you really want for your pleasure. You can also shoot me a text, 330-302-1554. That's going to be my source for all of my fantasy advice this season. If you have any thoughts on who you're trying to decide in your draft, who you want to trade for, I'm going to be dishing out some text coming out in the near future about guys that I'm targeting and not targeting in my drafts with a few quick reasons why. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to be exclusively over on the text platform. But you can also follow me on all social media at FFVulture. That's Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. TikTok's kind of crushing it low-key, so that's a great place to follow me. I'm actually kind of just cutting up individual chunks of some of the content and posting it over there. So if you just need like that quick reaction as to why I'm not drafting Derrick Henry, or my thoughts about Matt Stafford as being a late-round quarterback, that was one that did really well. So just kind of micro content on those platforms there. But I'm really excited about where things are going so far. I've been doing this for a month, and all numbers are good. The content's been killing it, and I'm really excited as we progress throughout this next chapter of month 2 and going into the 2020 season with Fantasy Vulture. But enough talking, let's just jump right into this. We're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins today, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is where we are starting with. A quarterback that I'm mildly excited about, or low-key. But let's break down last season, right? 2019 finish, quarterback 15 overall, 7 games as a QB1. 5 games as the QB2 and 3 games as the QB3, 502 pass attempts, 311 completions, 3,500 yards, 243 rushing yards, 24 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. He averaged 16.9 points per game on 15 games played. His new finish is quarterback 17. So you look at Ryan Fitzpatrick and you're like, all right, like we've seen this played a few times throughout the recency of his career and through the recent fantasy football season, where Ryan Fitzpatrick all of a sudden just becomes this gunslinger. And it really started, I feel like, with the Jets, and that was, I believe, 2014, where he had Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker. And I felt like that was his real emergence into this role, because he never knew how much time he was actually going to have left in his NFL career. So he's just going to go all pass-happy, gunslinging, and that works for fantasy. Now, quarterback 15 overall, like, that's not great, but when you look at 7 QB1 games, his QB2 games were pretty meddling. He probably didn't hurt you, but he didn't help you much either. And the 3 QB3 games, we don't like that. But I really want to focus in towards the back half of the season. And this was when Ryan Fitzpatrick absolutely lit the fantasy world on fire. From weeks 12 through 17, he was a quarterback 5 times, and he had 1 game as a quarterback 2, and he came in at quarterback 19. So that was like that back end stretch, and we kind of saw it developing over the course of the season. In weeks 7 and 9, that was when he put up his first QB1 game. So like the start of the season was really rough, and we saw that with the Dolphins initially, where we're like, oh, this team is actually bad. And then once they just kind of unleashed Fitzpatrick, and that feels like such a weird thing to say, things were great. So I really want, I feel like it's important to note with Fitzpatrick is that I'm not sure if he's a guy that you're willingly going to draft. You know, he is just kind of like this prototypical streaming quarterback. But I do think he is just an interesting name to keep an eye on. And the reason why is because some of the weapons that are returning, some weapons that are going to be emerging. We saw Devante Parker finally break out during his NFL career last season with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Preston Williams coming off the ACL. He's looking to be a guy that a lot of people are excited about. He played really well when he was on the field last season before the injury, so he has another weapon there. And of course, Mike Gesicki at the tight end position really broke out towards the back half of the season, and a lot of people are looking for him to make that jump into one of the more elite tight ends in the NFL. So with Ryan Fitzpatrick, it looks as if he has the weapons to do this again. And that defense has taken some steps to get better, but it's still not great. So there is a chance that they are going to be getting boat raced a lot, and garbage time does lead to touchdowns. And then last but not least, and this is kind of the real kicker and why everyone is more down on Fitzpatrick than in years past specifically, and that's just because Tua is coming in. And let's just bring that up right now. Tua Tungaviola, the number 5 pick in this year's NFL draft, quarterback out of Alabama. His player comparison is Drew Brees. He actually made the comment that he likes to think of himself as Russell Wilson and Drew Brees into one. So that's kind of scary, low-key. But we can only really talk about 2019. He obviously played great in 2018 as well. But for 2019, we're just going to go back to last season where he did have season-ending surgery after a really bad hip injury. So 180 completions on 252 pass attempts, 2,800 yards, 17 rushing yards, 35 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. He's 6 foot 217 and has a hand size of 10 inches. I don't really care about hand size. I talked about that earlier, but it's just a little fun metric to throw out there. But like Fitzpatrick, Tua is also being drafted after QB 25, after the middle of the 14th round. I have Tua ranked as quarterback 33. I have Fitzpatrick ranked as quarterback 31. These are not guys that I'm specifically targeting, and that's just because it's going to be a split opportunity, I think. I think Fitzpatrick is going to start the year because they have the luxury to kind of sit Tua out just a bit as he continues to recover from his hip injury, but all signs point to that he is good to go. So I think that they are going to let Fitzpatrick start probably the first 5 games or so, and then transition into Tua from there, because you don't spend your number 5 overall pick on a guy that you're probably going to sit for the first year or so. It's not, well, I think that's the interesting discussion, actually. Now that I say that out loud, it's very interesting. Could we have a Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes style year with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua? I think that's the interesting discussion, right? Because if you tell me we get 16 games of Ryan Fitzpatrick, I probably have him closer to QB, 14 or so, and pull that up. How many guys are you drafting? Like, that's the thing. It's not fun to draft Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I'm really interested to see where I would have him ranked, knowing I get a full 16-game season. So looking at this right now, I'd probably have him around QB 20 or so, and even that I know feels low. So I would have Goff ahead, Big Ben, Baker, Tannehill, and then slide in Fitzpatrick, and then behind Fitzpatrick would be Rivers, Burrow, Cousins, Minshew, Locke, and then the rest of the list. But if you that's the real thing, and we don't know what this season is going to shake out as far as the position at the quarterback position, at the quarterback position, lol. At the quarterback position for the Dolphins. So I'm just kind of staying away. If we get into the middle of the season and Fitz is still starting, even if you're just streaming quarterbacks early on in the year, I think Fitz is a great fit for you, just because he does have the potential to have the weapons, and obviously he is just a gunslinger who is going to air it out and have no regrets for it, which is why we love him. But all in all, I'm just kind of pumping the brakes here for the Dolphins quarterback, and it's just the same reason for the Bears. I just don't like that quarterback room for fantasy. And that's just because I don't want to spend draft capital on a guy who's probably going to start 5 games, or spend a draft pick on Tua knowing I don't get the first 5 games from him, but I probably get the second half. I'd rather just spend my waiver fab on him there mid-season. But let's talk about a guy that I do love, and that's Jordan Howard. Big Jordan Howard fan. Matthew Berry actually tweeted out the other day, I feel like, what would he say? He said something along the lines of, I'm the only one excited for Jordan Howard. No, Mr. Berry. No. I am right here. And that's one of the things that I thought have really sucked about the way that I've been doing these profiles. I don't get to get my takes out on guys early enough, and that was simply just because I got into this. I started this project in mid-July, And so I haven't been able to obviously get out a team every single day. And even so, if I did, I would probably just be wrapping up right now. So I haven't been able to give my takes on a few players. And Jordan Howard's one of them. Jordan Howard coming into the season is a guy that I want in every single league because the volume is going to be there and you're going to be getting him super late in drafts. And that has me so excited. Like, that is a beautiful combination. Especially because if you know me and you know my strategy, I love the running back position. I am a firm believer that running backs win you fantasy championships. I've seen it time and time again, basically for the past 13 years. It feels like every single year, the team with the best running backs and the most running back depth wins your championship. So in 2019, Jordan Howard finished as running back 38 in standard, 41 in PPR, 10.6 points per game on 10 games played. So that is important to factor into those finishes. He newly finishes at running back 28 now. He had 119 touches on 10 receptions, 525 rushing yards, 69 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. The weekly finishes: 2 games of the 2, 2 games of the 2. 2 games of the 2, 2 games of the 1, 2 games as a 3. So just 2 across the board. His current ADP is running back 40. Going at the 9th round. I'm ranked as running back 31. It should be higher, admittedly. I don't know how much higher it should be. Let's pull up my rankings right now. So, admittedly, probably should be higher. I have DeAndre Swift, Sony, Michelle needs to come down. Kareem Hunt should probably be ahead. Cam Akers, yeah. So, if anything, I'd have him in running back 30 if I were to adjust my rankings right now. Or running back. Because, let's see, Ronald Jones or Jordan Howard, they're kind of in that same tier to me. I'd probably keep Jordan Howard at 31 because I'd move Ronald Jones up and Sony Michel back so it would even out. Regardless, though, I love Jordan Howard this year. I think he's going to be a guy that easily gets 230 carries in this offense. If you remember last year, the Miami backfield was a complete disaster. Kalen Ballage, awful. Patrick Laird had to come in and be their running back. They traded Kenyon Drake midway through the season. It was an absolute disaster for that backfield. And now, finally, we get some sort of stability with Jordan Howard, where every single year he has been, healthier, even just when he is on the field, just in general. He is a quality running back for your fantasy team. Now, is he a guy that is going to just explode for points? Probably not, no. But he is a guy that is going to give you a consistent floor. And as I've talked about time and time again, this season I'm eyeing for consistency and depth more than anything. And Jordan Howard fits that bill, and he is part of my most important position in fantasy football. I'm so excited for him. His draft cost just makes me laugh because I feel like I'm getting an absolute steal in the 9th round. You tell me, I have 3 running backs already. And I get a starting running back to make that number 4 in the 9th round. Like, really? Are you serious? So I'm all in on Jordan Howard this season. I think he's going to see an increased volume, a great amount of volume. He won't be able to get off the field a lot, and just he's been good for fantasy every single season. Up next, I think, is going to be the only guy who could potentially put a dampener on my Jordan Howard love, and that is going to be Matt Breida, who the Dolphins traded for, I believe, on draft day. I think they gave up like a 6th round pick for him. He was previously over in San Francisco in that crowded backfield. So in 2019, Breida finished as running back 45 in both standard and PPR. He had 123 carries, 19 receptions, 623 rushing yards, 120 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. When you look at his adjusted score, because he did miss 3 games, 7.3 points per game on 13 games played. His new finish as running back 46. He had 1 game as a running back 1, 1 game as a running back 2, and 3 games as a running back 3. Now, there was a report that came out, I believe it was just about half a week or so ago, and the report said that secretly Matt Breida is the guy in Miami. And maybe that's true, maybe that's not, and you can tell that the ADP is thinking kind of similarly, just in terms of where he's going compared to Jordan Howard. A lot, like, it's kind of one of those things where you have to take your shot on either Breida or Howard because Breida's going as running back 41. I just said Howard was going as running back 40. And so they are both going in that middle of the 9th round. I have Breida ranked as running back 42. I'm just going to buy into Jordan Howard, a guy who we've seen be productive time and time again. I think he is a little bit one more talented running back. But Breida does complement Jordan Howard really well, and it was one of the things that I first said when the trade happened. You know, Howard is more so, I'm going to say this, but it's not incorrect, but it might be taken the wrong way. Howard is more so the Derrick Henry style, where it is just ground and pound. He's not going to do a whole lot in the receiving game. And Breida is just this little short burner who's, just going to kind of just take one play and just go with it. That's all he really needs. He's just this elusive, just speedy running back. So the difference in play style, I think, is going to be really interesting. But I do just see Breida being the third down running back, if anything at all. I'm not going to buy into those secret reports. Just because I really didn't see. I felt like if we knew Breida was going to be the number one, that's something that we would know, right? We've been through camp already, camps have started, media reports have been out, then there hasn't been a whole lot of buzz on that side of the things regarding Matt Breida outside of one source per se. But with Breida, I think he is a sneaky PPR guy. That's the one thing I'm really confident in saying. Just because I did just say that Jordan Howard probably won't see a whole lot of third down action. And if they use Breida in that role, this Dolphins team is still probably going to be down in a bunch of games. And so if that is the way that this goes and Jordan Howard gets game scripted out, Breida is going to be on the field during late in the third and through the fourth quarter, and that's where he can really provide you some value there. So if you are just looking for maybe if you're playing in a full point PPR league, I would probably lean Breida over Howard, and that is just simply because if things go poorly for the Dolphins this season, I don't think anybody's expecting this giant overhaul, worst to first type of thing for them. So if things do continue to just slowly trek on upward, that still means that they are going to be down quite a bit this year, and so Breida will have value there. So I do like Breida in that sense. But let's move on to the wide receiver core. And Devante Parker, who, like I just said earlier, finally broke out. We were waiting. We saw the talent. We saw glimpses, and he never pieced it together until last year when he finally had a quarterback who was willing to air it out to him. He finished as wide receiver 6 in standard, wide receiver 7 in PPR, 4 games as a wide receiver 1. 6 games as a wide receiver 1, 4 games as a wide receiver 2, and 2 games as a wide receiver 3. 128 targets, 72 catches, 1,200 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Devante Parker was absolutely unbelievable last season. 13.1 points per game on all 16 games played. New finish of wide receiver 11. So he does go down just a bit, but he does stay inside that wide receiver 1 territory. His current ADP, people aren't believing what he did last season. He's currently being drafted as a wide receiver 32. This was a guy who finished inside the top 10 last year, and we were taking him that late in drafts. He's currently going in the 7th round, which that just doesn't even feel real. I have him ranked as wide receiver 25, so I am higher than ADP. I am higher than the ADP on him right now. And for me, it's just really simple. It is if Ryan Fitzpatrick stays the quarterback long term, Devante Parker can easily repeat what he did last season. Like I just said, we've seen Ryan Fitzpatrick with Mike Evans. We've seen him with Brandon Marshall. We've seen him, I'm trying to think even before then. Oh, my memory. Oh, no. We've seen him with Devante Parker last year. Right? We can even just say that. Fitzpatrick loves to target just a big-bodied, go up and get it guy. And Devante Parker fits that mold, and if we get another year of Fitzmagic with the Dolphins, we're going to see this again. So being drafted at wide receiver 32 is almost nonsense to me. But I do think that question becomes, what happens when Tua steps in? We don't really know what Tua's play style is going to be in the NFL in that way. Is he willing to just throw it up? Obviously, he played with an elite cast at Alabama, so he is familiar with pro-level talent that Parker has. I want to actually pull up Parker's fantasy finishes because he really just came on strong during the back half of the year. He was the definition of a league winner. I do think it's important to note this, though, right? Because numbers can always skew things just a little bit, specifically fantasy finishes and points per game and things like that, right? So I'm already prepping as to ways I can improve this series. and I've talked about that just a little bit, which is why I like pulling up the context as to how well a player played during a stretch of season. That's why, like, for example, I just brought up how great Fitzpatrick was during the back half of the season. So for Parker, it was a little bit of a rough start, finished outside the top 36 for the first 3 weeks. And then from weeks 4 through 12, essentially, he was pretty much a consistent wide receiver 2. He had 4 games. He had all 4 of his games in that stretch, and 2 games as a 1. He also gave you 2 games as a wide receiver 3 in that stretch, so it kind of just cancels out, and he was pretty consistently a wide receiver 2 for you, and those 2 finishes were up and down. You're looking at 24, 15, 19, and 20. So he was just pretty, we'll say he was steady for you there. But then really just the last half of the season is what we really have to talk about. Weeks 13 through 17, 4 games as a wide receiver 1 and 1 game outside of the top 36. And like that, but like that's the thing, right? Once this team really just went into full tank mode, like full unleash Fitzmagic, that's when Parker really started having success. So while Davante Parker is a guy that, if given the right set of circumstances, can be productive, there is just always that thought that's going to be, well, what happens when Tua takes over? What happens in week 5 after Devante Parker balls out for the first 4 weeks of the season? Like, what do I do with him now that Tua starts? And the answer right now is I don't know. So if you're going to take Parker, I think there is a realistic expectation, or maybe this is expectation is the wrong word. If I were to draft Devante Parker, my own expectation would be to keep him, hold him for the first 4 weeks, and once you start hear the rumblings of Tua taking over, I'd look to shop him, because there is a realistic chance that Devante Parker starts this season off being a wide receiver 1. You know, he'll probably, if he continues where he left off last season, he will definitely be a wide receiver 1. So if we have a guy right here in the top 10, top 12, and you're able to flip him for something right before Tua slides in, I think that's a very interesting proposition for me. But Parker, overall, I'm not there. And the reason just why I'm not there is just because I don't want to have to deal with that quarterback change midway through the season. Like, 25 is just a very conservative rank because of that. Who do I have him ahead? For me, I have Devante Parker ahead of AJ Green, ahead of Stephon Diggs, ahead of Keenan Allen, ahead of Jarvis Landry. So Diggs is swapping teams. Keenan Allen gets a new quarterback. Jarvis just consistently has a high floor, low ceiling. And then Marquise Brown, I have at 30. Would you rather have Marquise Brown or Devante Parker? Oh, that's a very interesting question, all things considered. I think that's kind of like the cut, right? Like I think that's where the questions really start becoming interesting. Ahead of Devante Parker, I have Terry McLaurin, T.Y. Hilton, Metcalf, Chark, Lockett, Sutton. I feel like that was like a basic. For me, it's almost like Devante Parker represents like that tier gap of guys who I know are going to be pretty much fantasy studs, into like that next group of guys that have some question marks around them. And I feel like he just slides in perfectly because we have seen the stud side of Parker, but now what happens if there's a quarterback change in Miami? Up next, we're going to cap off the wide receiver position with Preston Williams, a guy who really showed out during the early portion of his rookie season, but unfortunately did suffer an ACL tear. In 2019, he finished as wide receiver 75 in both formats. Once again, just because of the fact that he did tear his ACL. But when he was on the field, 9.4 points per game on 8 games played. His new finish is wide receiver 45. So that's a clear example of a guy who was productive on the field, and that 2019 finish isn't going to reflect it. And that's why we really look at the adjusted score. 60 targets, 32 catches, 428 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 1 game as a wide receiver 1, 0 as a 2, 1 as a 3. He's currently being drafted as wide receiver 59 in the 13th round. I have him ranked as wide receiver 55. To me, it's more so just a thing of I don't know what I'm going to get out of Preston Williams. I don't know how many targets he's going to get. Like the fact that he had 60 targets in 8 games. What? Like he was on pace for 120 targets. And with this offense, like if this team is bad and they are going to throw the ball 500 times, like I said, Ryan Fitzpatrick threw the ball 502 times last season. So if they throw for over 500 again, like Preston Williams should easily see 110, 120 targets. I think he's just a really interesting candidate because even like the adjusted score, like 9.4 points per game as a rookie, he was seeing volume, he was seeing opportunity, and now that Albert Wilson opted out and Allen Hurns opted out, like it's literally Devante Parker, Preston Williams, and Mike Gesicki. That's it. I know they drafted Malcolm Perry out of Navy, and they're gonna kind of use him all over the field. It looks like. But like he's not a guy he's not a guy that's going to make an immediate impact, I don't think. But just focusing on those three guys, like there is a lot of potential for this Dolphins offense in terms of fantasy, and I kind of think of it along the lines of Jacksonville, like in like that same thing. If you remember what I said about the Jags, it was basically this team might be bad, but they are going to have to play from behind a lot, and that equates to fantasy points. That's why I like DJ Chark so much this season. So Preston Williams, I think he's a very good number 2 option. Number 2 team option, should I say. Like, not for fantasy, but like real life. And the fact that he is going so late, if you want to take your shot on him, I don't mind it just because we see the path, right? Year 1, we saw the outline of, oh, this guy could be good. Now, what happens after year 2? I don't know. There is some concern coming off of the ACL injury. That's why I do have him ranked a little bit lower. Granted, I do have him still ahead of ADP. But like, let's see. Think of it this way. I have Preston Williams at 55. Ahead of him, like rookie-wise, I have Ruggs, I have Judy, I have Jefferson, I have Rager. And that actually goes in reverse order. So I have Ruggs at 54, Judy at 50, Jefferson at 49, and Rager at 48. And I actually have CeeDee Lamb at 51 as well. So I would take my shot on the rookies first, but if you miss out on all of them per se, I think Preston Williams is a guy that just kind of keep your eye on. And lastly, let's move over to Mike Gesicki, Dolphins tight end. He finished as tight end 11 in both formats, standard and PPR. 5 games as a tight end 1, 3 games as a tight end 2, and 4 games as a tight end 3. 89 targets, 51 receptions, 570 yards, and 5 touchdowns. 6.9 points per game on 16 games played. His new finish is tight end 20, which is not great. His current ADP is tight end 13, going in the 10th round. I have him ranked as tight end 16, so I am a bit lower on him than the consensus. Who do I have ahead of Mike Gesicki? So I have TJ Hawkinson, and the news just came out just yesterday, I believe it was, that Hawkinson still is not 100%. So we're going to move Gesicki up to 15 for now. I do have to make that reflection in my rankings. I kind of have these player profiles done a few days in advance. Let's see. I have Gronk ahead of Gesicki. That's a question mark, I think. But I think that's kind of like the only big one. So you move Gesicki maybe up to 14 or 15. To me, it's just one of those things where I don't know if I buy the hype. And when you get down into this territory of, guys outside of the top 8 per se, like once you get outside Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews, Ertz, Waller, Cook, and maybe Ingram, like what you're going to get out of those guys, and everybody else, it's who are you willing to take your shot on? For me, I'm not willing to take my shot on Mike Gesicki. I like Hayden Hurst more. I like Jonnu Smith more. I think Noah Fant's a little bit interesting. Chris Herndon, you can make the argument. So we're really just picking our guy. If you're waiting on the tight end position, we are in the 10th round. It's who do you want? For me, Mike Gesicki, I think the talent is there a lot. Like his athletic profile, admittedly, is absolutely insane. But I'm just not comfortable. I'm not comfortable spending my tight end pick, my one-off, on a guy who kind of has been all over the place in terms of finishes, right? For fantasy finishes that we've seen, like just going back to last year alone. And maybe this was just the story for the Dolphins as a whole. When you look at his game log again and where he finished weekly, it was that week 12 through 17 stretch where once again another Miami Dolphin player was super productive. He had 4 of his 5. He had 4 of his 5 tight end 1 games within that stretch. And I feel like that's really where we saw the hype starting to pick up for Gesicki. The early parts of the season were really rough. In the first 11 weeks, he had all 4 of his all 4 of his tight end 3 games, 2 games as a 2 and 1 game as a 1. So it was pretty much a tale of 2 halves for him, and you're kind of just hoping that the back half represents what we can see from the full season. So it's not that I hate Gesicki. I feel like I just rather take my shot elsewhere in regards to the tight end position. But if you want to, like, there is the path, there is the blueprint that we saw last season. And again, though, you have to ask yourself, what does his scenario look like when Tua takes over? Because that's just the expectation, right? The expectation is that Tua Tungaviola is going to take over this job, and it's just a matter of when, not if. But I think that's going to do it for our Miami Dolphins player profiles for 2020 fantasy football season. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. We're doing this basically every single day all through the rest of August. Looking at it now, I now have 9 of these left to do. It's been a wildly fun and entertaining ride. I've loved being able to just kind of do like these deep dives on individual players, see where they were last year, and reflect and project on what they could be in 2020. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, I already said that. You know, like, just shoot me a text right now. Just skip the bullshit. Shoot me a text, 330-302-1554. My source and my home for all of my fantasy advice this season. Like I said, I'm going to be utilizing that a lot more during this next month or so as we get into the season and as we get out of draft season. And lastly, you can also, well, I went way too far. You can also shoot me a message on social media. My DMs are open there. You can follow me on social media at FFVulture, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and of course the website is fantasyvulture.com. That's all I have for now. Remember, people come and go, but fantasy championships are forever. I'm out. Later.